The Richard Roeper Show is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. The digital landscape is changing rapidly, and to compete in today's online business environment, you need an experienced partner. Since 1995, AmericanEagle.com has partnered with companies of all sizes, offering web design, web development, e-commerce, mobile apps, and digital marketing to drive your overall business's success, because they believe that today's online world is your online opportunity. Visit AmericanEagle.com to get started today. AmericanEagle.com.
I think it sounds like a great agency, and I think Duck is the man to run it. I just don't think I'll be a part of it.
You don't want to be a part of it?
If this is the agency you want, Duck is the man for the job.
This is what I'm talking about. Artistic temperament.
Don, is this really necessary?
It is. Because he loves this room and hearing his own voice and saving the day. Except this time he's got to get with the team. Don, you can either honor your contract or walk out that door with nothing and start selling insurance.
I don't have a contract.
We're close. We didn't think we needed one.
Gentlemen, I sell products, not advertising. I can't see as far into the future as Duck, but if the world is still here on Monday, we can talk.
All right, some of you might have recognized that's just a little audio snippet from the great series Mad Men. And it's been about a month since I promised we were going to talk about the repeatability of certain television series and why some shows are comfort viewing and we like to revisit them, and then the one-offs, the ones that we just watch one time and we love them and we respect them, but either they're too intense or whatever the case may be, and we don't want to go back to watching them. So I thought we'd finally get into that because I recently rewatched Mad Men. I don't even know. It wasn't like a conscious decision. I'm like, everybody always asks me, because I watch so many shows and movies for review purposes, do I watch for fun? And I do, but I sometimes I'm like, oh, I got to rewatch this. And I'm thinking of like, for example, I can't wait to rewatch The Accountant, the Ben Affleck movie, because The Accountant 2 is coming out in a few weeks. So got to revisit the original to get in the mood for that. Or I'm like everybody else, St. Patrick's Day, let's watch The Fugitive, or other movies that are timed to certain holidays or dates. But a lot of times I'm just like, I'll go to Prime Video, I'll go to Netflix, go to Apple TV, Plus, whatever the case may be. What do I want to watch? And this is like, I'm talking about like at the end of the workday when I'm taking the iPad to bed or I'm just lounging, finally turn on the TV on for fun. And I don't know, I said, I want to go back and watch the pilot for Mad Men, because I just remember how brilliantly executed it was. And one of the things, if you go back and look at the pilot, the famous credits, the cool animated credits where at the end, it turns out we're looking at, a black and white rendering of Don Draper, with the black hair and the suit and the cigarette. And one of the opening moments, the first 30 seconds of the pilot of Mad Men, Don Draper's in a New York bistro at night. And it's almost the exact same shot of him from behind. And then remember, he talks to the waiter, what's your brand of cigarettes? And do you do it for the taste? How would you ever change? And that's how we get to know that he's an ad man. He's an ad man on Mad Men. And spoiler alert, because this is 2007, I want to say. Don Draper, we see him as this dashing guy. And then he goes to see his bohemian girlfriend in her cool, I don't know if it's Greenwich Village or whatever, but, cool New York apartment. And they make love and they're seriously close, and they're talking about, he says something at one point, let's get married. And she laughs and she's like, I'm never going to do that. And then I think, if I recall correctly, he might go straight to work. But anyway, eventually the episode ends with Don Draper going home. And that's when we find out that he's married with children, because it certainly didn't seem that way. And then it goes on from there. So I started rewatching Mad Men, and it's so well done. It's so accurate to the time, and sometimes in horrific ways. And we'll talk about that in a second. And I didn't want to watch it all the way through, because there are certain episodes that, Mad Men always was a show with a certain deliberate style, from the pacing of storylines, even to the acting styles. It was a very kind of, it worked beautifully, but there was a certain muted brilliance to Mad Men. The way people talked, I don't want to say it was stiff, but it had a little bit of David Mamet type of thing, but at a slower, if you were like slowing down the pace of it all. So there's certain episodes where I'm like, I know not that much really happens, even though it's fascinating to watch. There's always a lot of insights, or they're going off on a subplot that I didn't care that much about. But I really did enjoy rewatching it. I hadn't watched it. I maybe have seen it since its first run in the 2000s. But I also thought, okay, that's it. When I got, and I the last episode is brilliant, along with The Sopranos and Game of Thrones, very polarizing. But I think there's no doubt that Don did return to advertising. He wrote that famous Coca-Cola jingle. And I'm like, okay, I've done Mad Men. I might, stumble upon a moment or two, but I'm never going to rewatch it all the way through. This was interesting though. And this had happened a while ago, but I wasn't aware of it because I hadn't watched Mad Men for a long time. But there's an episode in which John Slattery's character of Roger Sterling, arguably the most fascinating character, even more than Don Draper, a brilliant performance. There's an episode where they're hosting an antebellum type of party, and he appears in blackface. And they now have a disclaimer in front of that episode. I think they did this when it returned to streaming a while back, but I didn't know it because I hadn't been watching it. So Lionsgate has added a disclaimer to the episode to show how commonplace racism was in America in 1963. So the statement was, this episode, you'll see it if you call it this episode. This episode contains disturbing images related to race in America. One of the characters is shown in blackface as part of an episode that shows how commonplace racism was in America in 1963. In its reliance on historical authenticity, the series producers are committed to exposing the injustices and inequities within our society that continue to this day, so we can examine even the most painful parts of our history in order to reflect on who we are today and who we want to become. We're therefore presenting the original episode in its entirety. Kudos to Lionsgate for doing it that way. We've talked about this with other shows and movies. Don't just cut the scenes out. Show them for what they were. That was a reality of what people were doing in 1963. People can handle it. I think it's good to say, here's why we're doing it, so it doesn't just, shock people. But whether it's Gone with the Wind, and they've done presentations now of Gone with the Wind where there's panel discussions afterward, and, or a disclaimer at the beginning. But the history is the history, and we have to acknowledge the history and hopefully not repeat history, although we continue to repeat history. So, and remember with E.T., and this was Steven Spielberg who wanted to replace the guns with the walkie-talkies, and I'm like, it's his movie, he can do what he wants. But to me, it's like that's how the movie was made. There's a lot of movies. You don't have to go back to Gone with the Wind. You'll talk about, repeatability and rewatching things, and you'll see it cringe stereotypes often. And in Mad Men, you go back to the treatment of women by the men, though, not by the show, but by the men, because that's how women were treated. So it's accurate, even if it's sometimes difficult to watch. Repeatability. I went back not too long ago and also rewatched The Sopranos, but I did find that I was too familiar with it because I'd probably watched it a couple of times. So even though it's great, I found myself kind of impatiently moving forward, skipping ahead episodes and just picking out some favorites. Breaking Bad, same thing. I've seen it probably too many times now. It's great. I'm not diminishing any of these shows, but there's a certain point where you're like, I've seen Breaking Bad every which way but loose. And I might go revisit a favorite episode in 5 years, but probably not. I like it sitting where it is in my memories. Now, of course, it's a lot easier with sitcoms because even though they have ongoing storylines, you can jump in on any episode of Modern Family or Seinfeld if you'd like and have fun with that. There's a reason why shows like that are much more popular in syndication than other types of shows. And by the way, The Office, classic repeatable show, it was a very big hit. It took a while to catch on, much like Cheers and Seinfeld, but eventually became a big deal. But in syndication, it's insane. They're streaming wherever. I think it's on Peacock now. For sure, it's on Peacock. Might be available some other places, even on good old-fashioned television. The 20th anniversary recently passed. We had the 20th anniversary of the pilot of the American version of The Office, which, of course, there was a brief run for the original British version. And I did go back. I wanted to watch the pilot because I think The Office initial run, season 1, was 6 episodes. It was one of those shows where and they filmed the pilot, shot the pilot, and then it was, I think, a couple of months before they even went back for the second episode and decided to give it a 6-episode run. And as my memory served me correctly, the opening episode of The Office, it's very much leaning into the whole, it's a documentary. Like the camera angles are a lot more like the cameras are like on the carpet in the office or around the corner. trying to not be intrusive. After a while, they're just like, yeah, they're making a documentary. And they followed through on that eventually because we got to see the American workplace, right? The Office. Whereas Modern Family, the style was a mockumentary and they never really followed through on that. They just said, you know what, we're just going to do it this way. And there was some thought about that a foreign exchange student that had lived with Jay's family had come back to shoot this as a young filmmaker, but they never really did that. They just the opening episodes, you see them on the couch and talking to the camera, and then they just would do it once in a while. But with The Office, the opening episode, Michael Scott, Steve Carell, he's such a good actor because, man, to the end, Michael Scott could be a very problematic character. We know that. Sexist, racist, clueless, very inappropriate. But in the first few episodes of the pilot, I mean, Jesus. He thinks he's funny and he's not. And he actually became funny in some ways. And sometimes the funniest people are those who don't realize why people are laughing. But it's almost like a dark Bergman film if you look at the opening episode, the pilot, from the point of view of Jenna Fisher's Pam. She's absolutely miserable at her reception desk. Michael Scott berates her, makes comments about how she's not as hot as she used to be. At one point tells her if she's not happy, maybe she should look for work elsewhere, and then fake fires her as a prank and reduces her to tears. We also see, obviously, there's clearly some chemistry with Jim, but she's engaged to Roy. And she says, yeah, we've been engaged. She tells the documentary crew in the opening episode of the pilot, well, we've been engaged for 3 years now, and we were going to get married, but I think it's going to be next year. And you get the sense like, okay, and you see him, and Roy also had kind of an evolution as a secondary character, but in the pilot, he's just a jerk. He's an indifferent bully. He doesn't treat her well at all. Pam is just miserable. And there are characters when they go to the conference room, there's like 3 or 4 characters who never appear again. And we're, that happens with a lot of pilots where things change a lot from the original as the series goes on. But it's still a great episode, a great sitcom for repeatability. I think when we get into one-timers, if you will, all great shows, but even White Lotus. Now we're getting near the end of season 3 of White Lotus. I've seen all but the last episode. And I think they've gotten better, I think, every year. They're following a certain pattern. We have a certain group of people that many of them, there's always like the one young son, and there's the friends and, kind of the quirky outsiders, whatever the case may be. And White Lotus is really good, but I did go back before season 3. I'm like, maybe I'll take a look at season 1 again. And I was like, nah, because it's self-contained, even though each year we go to a different place. But, you start off with the death of at least one character. Then you flash back a week earlier with them all arriving on the boat. We get to know the hotel staffers and the interactions, and then we find out who done it. And I found, with White Lotus, as much as I liked the second season better than the first, but I don't think I'm going to go back and watch White Lotus ever again. I think when you talk about, more intense things too, The Leftovers, the various chapters of True Detective, even though once again, they are, individual chapters, but once you find out what it's all about and who did it, I don't think people go back and repeat those. So The Handmaid's Tale, Baby Reindeer, even Game of Thrones, it just shows that you watch once, you really get into them, and then you just let them go. But the repeatability, I think, goes mostly to sitcoms, sometimes some great episodic dramas. So see, I told you we were going to get to the repeatability factor of TV shows. We're going to take a break now, talk about Portillo's, which has a great repeatability factor because there's so many great items on the menu. And then we got some other stuff to get into. All right, let's talk about Portillo's. Now, they, of course, are known for their famous Chicago hot dogs with all the freshest and tastiest ingredients, right down to that poppy seed bun. And then, of course, there's the legendary chocolate cake. If you're hearing this right now, that means you are alive and near a computer. That's all you got to be. That's all you need to go to Portillos.com and check out their entire selection of stuff you can get anywhere in these United States of America. Now, if you're blessed enough to live near a Portillo's, then you don't have to worry about getting online. Just go to the store, get the hot dogs, get the Italian beef, the salads, the chicken. They got it great. And then, of course, the chocolate cake, the single greatest item of all chocolate cake items in the history of humanity. You think I'm overstating that? I am not. Go and find out yourself. Go to the store, order online. unbelievable, the chocolate cake. And they even have a cake shake. They take the cake, they smush it into a can with some super cool ingredients. I don't know. They do a bunch of stuff. There's ice cream. And all of a sudden, you got a chocolate cake shake. When it comes out of the blender, it's the best. It is a unique dining experience every time. Go to portillos.com. Find a location near you. You can order online. Portillos. Portillos.com.
Yes. I am Mr. Hollister, the manager. May I help you?
Edward Lewis.
Ah, yes, sir.
You see this young lady over there?
Yes.
Do you have anything in this shop as beautiful as she is?
Oh, yes. Oh, no. No. I'm saying we have many things as beautiful as she would want them to be. That's the point I was getting at. And I think we can all agree with that. That's why when you came in here,
You know what we're going to
knew
need
from
here?
the first.
We're going to need a few more people helping us out. I'll tell you why. We're going to be spending an obscene amount of money in here. So we're going to need a lot more help sucking up to us because that's what we really like. You understand that?
Sir, if I may say so, you're in the right store and the right city, for that matter. Anything you see here we can do, by the way. Get ready to have some fun, okay? Okay. Mary Pat, Mary Kate, Mary Frances, Tova, let's see it. Come on, bring it out.
Absolutely divine.
Great picture. Excuse me, sir. Yeah. Exactly how obscene an amount of money were you talking about? Just profane or really offensive?
Really offensive.
I like him so much.
That is a clip from Pretty Woman. It's the 35th anniversary of Pretty Woman. Can you believe that? The 35th anniversary of Pretty Woman. You want to talk about a classic in terms of making somebody a star. Julia Roberts becoming a huge star. She had done some other fine work before that, but that was one of those old-fashioned Hollywood deals where that's a movie star. 35th anniversary of Pretty Woman. When Anora came out last year, I, among others, pointed out that this was basically the dark and gritty and realistic side of Pretty Woman, because both films feature a woman from a lower socioeconomic background and is now working in the sex trade as a sex worker. And then a wealthy man comes along and says, I'll buy your services for a week. But then there's, possibly a romance that evolves. And then it's very different from that point on. But Pretty Woman is one of those many films where people say, they couldn't remake it today. First of all, they probably will because they remake everything. And I always believe, we were just talking about this too. It's like, the film was what it was when it came out. And there's a piece of a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say where it came from because I don't want to have people dumping directly on the writer of this piece. But this kind of explains, this retrospective rear view mirror thing. So the article was 10 things from Pretty Woman that have aged poorly. They talk about the lack of diversity, the way Edward, the character, treats the support staff, because he's a high-powered businessman. Of course, that's how he would. That's Richard Gere's character, by the way. The gender roles, the fact that the technology is different. It's like, well, yeah, but that was the technology of the time. They say that there's a white knight element to this with Edward rescuing Vivian, although she does say that she's going to rescue him right back. So, yeah, if you look at Pretty Woman, let's be honest. It's a fairy tale about a sex worker and a multi-zillionaire. And that's what it is. That's who Julia's character of Vivian is. Now, we find out that she hasn't been doing it for very long, that she, was kind of in a situation where there was nothing else she could do. And we clearly, listen, it is not in any way, shape, or form representative of what that life is, even if you're, whatever you want to call it, an escort. It's a glossy fairy tale. And it's made for the movies of the time. All the scenes are big and showcasey. I mean, 35 years ago, but it kind of plays like a movie from the 50s. So you get the shopping sequence where she's humiliated, and then there's the big revenge sequence where she gets to go back. You get the scene at the polo match where Jason Alexander, of all people, speaking of repeatability, and Seinfeld, plays, Edward's lawyer, and he's a horrible person, and he finds out that he has paid, Edward callously says, I paid for this woman, and he then kind of hits on her, and then later he assaults her, and Edward has to come in and save her. And, the whole subplot about the, taking the company, Edward purchases companies and then sells them off. and Ralph Bellamy plays the old-fashioned businessman. And at the end, Edward decides we're going to make things together. We're going to build things together. And Ralph Bellamy's character has his hand on his shoulder and says, "I'm proud of you, son." So now Edward's finally getting the paternal approval that he never had. And then you get the big ending with the, up the staircase and the opera music and over the top proclamations of love. And you do wonder, like, how's this going to work out next week for those two? But that's what it is. It's a fairy tale. Yeah, if you remade it, you'd have to change some of that. But I still think, and I did go back and rewatch it. And yeah, there are some moments where you're like, okay, might not play today, but enjoyable as hell. I did dig up a couple of things about, with it being the 35th anniversary, other actors turned down the role of Edward. As we have found out through the years, in just about every movie you can think of, somebody else was offered the role first, or was in development with it, or thought about it, and then it went to somebody else, unless you're Tom Cruise. I think there's some great actor recently who said, no matter what script they get, they know that Leonardo DiCaprio's fingerprints are on it, that he looked at it at some point, some venue, somewhere. So unless you're that guy or that woman or that person. So the reports are that Sylvester Stallone, hey, Vivian, yo, Vivian, sorry, that he turned down the role, according to some reports. And there are all kinds of other actors. It's always this way before somebody gets cast. So there was like maybe Harrison Ford or, Denzel Washington, stars of the time. Jennifer Connelly and Sandra Bullock reportedly turned down the role before it was offered to Julia Roberts. They wanted Meg Ryan, but they decided that Julia Roberts was the way to go. So you see these screen tests sometimes once in a while of different actors auditioning for roles or talking about it. In the case of Pretty Woman, then when the movie comes out, you're like, I can't imagine anybody else in that role. So it usually works out. And actors will talk about the fact that some of them, I didn't get the part, but then when I saw what Brad Pitt did in Thelma and Louise, or I saw what Edward Norton did in this and that, Fight Club, or whatever the case may be, then they're like, yeah, that was probably the best thing. It all works out. It's a weird, crazy business, because even the best of the best, the most acclaimed actors are often turned down for roles, or turn down roles and then say, why did I turn that down? Pretty Woman, 35 years old. I got a couple. One other thing I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about this. All roads keep going back. All roads keep going back to Seinfeld. It's almost as if I designed this, but I didn't. Patrick Warburton, remember Putty? Hey, Putty. He is taking the blame for the raw dogging trend. And I know that we've heard that term in other contexts, but raw dogging, you may have heard, is this this deal where you just, if you're on a long flight, you don't do anything. You don't nap, you don't read, you don't listen to music, you don't watch media, you just stare straight ahead. And that somehow, and people like tweet about this or TikTok and post and everything. So it's the act of boarding a flight, long haul or otherwise, with no headphones, no book, no form of entertainment other than the ever-present digital flight map. People are, I guess, doing this. And you might remember there's a famous episode of Seinfeld where Patrick Warburton as David Putty got on a flight with Julia Louis-Dreyfus's Elaine, and she's like, are you going to read or nap or do anything? And he's like, no. He's just going to sit there and stare at the back of the seat. Because of that, she breaks up with him on the flight.
I can't believe we broke up like that.
It was stupid.
You want something to read?
No, I'm good.
Well, are you going to take a nap? Or...
No.
You just going to sit there staring at the back of the seat? That's it! I cannot take this. I mean, look at this. Nothing has changed. We've been back together 2 hours. We're having the same problems we had 12 hours ago.
Oh, tell me about it. I don't know why I ever took you back.
Oh, please. I took you back. You know it. I know it. Vegetable lasagna here knows it.
Please. I don't want to get involved.
Oh, I hope a giant mountain rises out of the ocean and we just ram right into it and end this whole thing.
Oh, God.
So now Patrick Warburton is saying, my concern is somebody's going to get hurt if you go into this thing blindly. It's Be careful, he says. It's not for novices. First of all, yeah, I'm sure somebody came up with that. I don't know if aren't people really doing that? Are they really raw dogging? It seems to be some sort of a man thing on flights, or do they just post a picture? Because I couldn't do that. I can't be on a flight from Chicago to Los Angeles for 4 hours and look at the little digital flight thing. You can try to sleep. I'm not really great at sleeping on planes. I don't know how people can. You're on an airplane, a metal tube going through the sky at crazy speeds. That would frighten early man, but some people can just snore away. But I'll watch something or listen to podcasts like the Richard Roeper Show. The idea of just staring at the back of the seat. How could you? Is anybody really doing that? But that's what's called raw dogging. I guess it's better than when we were doing all those challenges. Remember, for a while there, we were what was it, planking, where you just were like prone on some piece of furniture or a bench. And I know a lot of these challenges too. Challenges are different than this, because challenges a lot of times, at least you were raising money for a cause. So you did the ice bucket challenge or some idiotic thing. But I don't think anybody's raising any money with raw dogging. But if we want to talk about repeatability, go back to Seinfeld and watch the episode where Putty stares at the back of a seat and Elaine can't take it. There you go. We've come full circle. I'm Richard Roeper. This is The Richard Roeper Show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.